You'll have noticed that sociologists and political scientists managed to study all aspects of society, past and future. There seems no limit to their focus. So wouldn't it be good to go the whole hog and have a department devoted entirely to the study of the meaning of life? Well, this has actually been done at the University of Taihape in New Zealand. Here's the new professor, and I think you know his name.
I think that this is a particularly significant occasion for the program, and it seems eminently suitable that we should ignore very briefly the peripheral areas, however valuable in the wonderful tapestry of science, and I think we should have a crack at addressing ourselves instead to the perpetual cosmic giant killer, the question of what is life. It's been worrying scientists for thousands of years. Mind you, they're a jumpy bunch of garçons, your science boys, and they do tend to worry very easily. And I feel that the very least we can do is to spend a few moments of our very valuable time in quiet and restful contemplation as to what it's all about and why we're here. And then after that we can have some lunch. Now, as to the business of when life actually got going, there's very, very little argument amongst the lads who are working in that area. Of course, some of them are getting on a bit now, and the smallest upset would have them toppling into the afterlife, so they do like to sit round and agree with one another and knock off the departmental port. The actual day of the beginning of life is not known because, of course, the National Geographic was in a very adumbral phase at that stage. It is known, though, and generally agreed by the boys, that if the first man who ever lived was alive today, he'd be pulling around about $47 million a week in old age pensions. There have been several old boys located in various spots. For instance, there was Bogman, who was located in a bog. We don't actually know what he was doing in the bog, but he was located there. Now, science slowly, with the help of these discoveries, is piecing together the story of man's evolution, and there seems very little doubt that man is descended from Neanderthal primates, as we scientists call them, or in lay terms, mummy and daddy. Now, of all the many turning points and crucial stages from primitive ape-like creature through to the sophisticated and marginally less primitive ape-like creature that you see about you at zoos and football matches, the most curious development of all is that of the human brain. The human brain has got man into a lot more trouble than has previously been supposed, and unless we come up with some way of putting the brain out of commission or obviating some of the more ludicrous effects of the brain, then I don't think life's going to get any better. Now, the main shortcoming of the human brain is that it has led to all this discussion about the meaning of life, which is not really very healthy. It's quite a dangerous business because the more you think about life, the less likely you are to reach a conclusion. That is, if you don't count concluding that you aren't going to reach a conclusion as an actual conclusion. Now, of all the attempts to work out what life is actually about, one of the more interesting ones were the boys that reckoned that you don't know anything. You can't know stuff, these guys reckoned, because when you think about it, and you'll just have to accept the term think about it there until the man arrives with the official phrase book, all your so-called knowledge about the world is based on your perceptions. And your perceptions are just a touch more fallible than people have cared to admit.
You're here talking about Bishop Berkeley and the solipsist, of course.
Yes, Bishop Berkeley, whose brother, I believe, is the captain of India. Now, it has been suggested by the bishop that you can't know things because your perceptions are notoriously fallible. For instance, the visual sense has been known to play tricks. Now, sometimes when you think you see something, you actually don't see it, and sometimes you don't see something, or you say you don't see it, and it's common knowledge around the village that you saw it. And, of course, that can lead to trouble. Now, you can't go drawing any conclusions, this is what these garçons reckon, from that sort of thing, or you'll make a monkey of yourself in open court. Now, this is what the bishop reckoned, and this argument applies to all the senses. Now, Samuel Johnson, who was a he was fat, let's face it, he was a fat person. He reckoned that he cleaned up the problem one day when he kicked a stone, and he stated with relative certainty that he was rewarded with a goodly sharp pain belting through his bunion. Now, of course, you could say that Samuel only thought he kicked the stone when in fact he was actually home in bed eating kumquats and thinking up some one-liners for a 21st speech he was writing for Saturday. Now, the whole business of doubt was perfected and refined a little later on by a character named René Descartes, who was a member of the French nation. And after he'd finished with it, there wasn't a whole lot of mileage left in it, and the up-and-coming apprentice thinkers decided to give the whole area a swerve and get on to something with a bit more class, where they could show off a bit better. What René did was he started doubting things. Now, once you start doubting your perceptions, you get on to realising that you can't be sure whether you're actually here, or maybe only think you're here, which is a bit of a worry, and it's only a matter of moments before you're picking spots of light off the wall and putting them in a basket, and pretty soon you'll find yourself in a tight white overcoat in a room full of Napoleons and Lord Nelsons, which is the principal fallacy of René's idea. Now, of course, in the 20th century, we have produced a fair array of theories about what life's actually about, and probably the existentialists take the buttered confection for getting closest to thinking they had it all worked out. Now, they used to hang about around the Paris area, which is in what we used to call Gaul, before the Pyrrhics. They talk about how terrible life was and how they didn't know if they'd really get to the weekend. They reckoned life was a pretty dreadful business and was filled with a thing called ennui. Now, ennui is a terrible thing that seems to have roughly the same effect as terminal boredom. Ennui actually is a French word meaning Henry. And the story goes that once you get a touch of the Henrys, it's all downhill, and the only way to relieve the symptoms is whip down the harbour and pull a wave over your bonce and call it a day. Now, from these examples, you can see the dangers of thinking too much about what life is about and whether or not it's worth living.